This is Seahawks Stories, 50th Season Edition, presented by Emerald City Athletics.
We are broadcasting from the Seahawks podcast studio, presented by Sony, an official partner of the Seattle Seahawks. Welcome back for more Seahawks stories from the 50th Season Edition. I'm Jen Mueller alongside Matt Hasselbeck. As today we are going to drop into the 2005 season and everything that meant for Seattle.
All right.
Are you ready for that?
I'm ready. Talk sporty to me. Let's go.
Okay, Matt. Well, I think every Seahawks fan knows what 2005 means if you think about the end of that season and if you think about the record from that year and how awesome that was, minus the final game of the season.
Yeah.
But what happens if we back it up just a little bit? Because that 2005 year capped a couple of tough and I think somewhat questionable years inside the franchise.
Well, I mean, 05 was an incredible season for a lot of different guys. I mean, I remember just even after the Super Bowl, being at the Pro Bowl, seeing like all of our guys getting recognized and, introduced. I mean, it was a great season for the offense, for the defense. The special teams guy that year was from the Seahawks also. Our kicker had a great year. A lot of pride in that 05 season. Obviously, not getting the chance to hoist the Lombardi and bring it back here. That was really our plan and our goal. Not getting that opportunity is tough, but I think there's a lot of great lessons through the season and obviously, even in the loss.
We're going to dive into those 7 Pro Bowlers from the Seahawks.
I knew it was a lot. I didn't know the number.
Yep, you were one of 7. There were also 4 All-Pro selections that year. It was Sean and Mac. So Sean Alexander and Mac Strong, I think of them as a tandem. And it was Walter Jones and Steve Hutchinson were the Pro Bowlers. Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, even I remember at the Pro Bowl, in fact, the starting center was like left-handed. And I think he was left-handed, but I forget what. I couldn't get the snap from him. And then Robbie Tobeck was also in the Pro Bowl, but he wasn't the starter. And I was like, can we just like flip who's starting here so I can get the snap from my guy? It's just like a weird, but it was just cool to have like all your guys there, all your teammates. Well, now I just want to go down the rabbit hole of how many left-handed snappers are there in the league, because that is a conversation I have never had.
It's like a, I don't know.
It's rarer than a left-footed kicker?
Who the Patrick Mahomes' center is left-handed, actually, now that I think about it. But enough about them. Let's go back to 05.
All right, here we go. Let's go back to 05, and actually let's back it up to 04, because I think Mike Holmgren talked about potentially leaving, or at least he has said that in years since then, that it was kind of rough and that he actually thought about stepping away. Did you ever get that sense from Mike?
No, I think sometimes I hear stories like that and it's a little bit like parents have stuff going on and the kids don't know about it a little bit, but there was a lot of transition. Mike had many roles here, GM, some like front office scouting type roles, and that sort of got taken away from him. I think maybe going into that year, and Tim Ruskell came in and was, I think it was Paul Allen who was kind of like, hey, you just do scouting, you just do coaching and some of that stuff. And so like, I'm sure there was some strife, but we as players, I don't think I was ever really too focused on it. What I remember though, about 04 is losing a devastating wild card game at home against the Rams, the greatest show on turf. They were our nemesis at the time. And losing on the last play of the game. And I just remember like punching the turf as hard as I could, like literally almost like wanting to break my hand. I was so angry about losing on the last play of the game. I had a chance, last play, ball's in my hands. I gave the ball to Bobby Ingram. I put a little too much mustard on it. He wasn't able to make the catch. And I was really feeling like I blew it right there. And that was 04. Go back to the year before, 03. That's the, now infamous, we want the ball, we're going to score, Al Harris interception. That's, again, the last play. Like, do I regret that play and then regret the Bobby Ingram play? Like, yes, in a sense I do, but I also am very aware that had we not had the heartache in 03, the heartache in 04, I don't think we have the season we have in 05, for me personally and also for the team. We kind of had a motto going into 05. If you do this, if you do the same thing, you're going to get the same result, basically. And so we took a step back in a lot of respects. And we said, we're going to, care less about potential and talent. We're going to care more about who can we count on, and like some of that professionalism, just some of these like different things. And like, even for me personally, I did different things as I looked in the mirror. And now you looking back, like there's no way we have the year that we have collectively as a team in 05 had we not all sort of had the heartache in the 2 previous years.
What were the things that you changed?
I mean, there's a laundry list, but I would just say like right off the bat, every year, my position coach, Jim Zorn, he'd come in with like, here are 3 things that I want you to work on personally. Here are 3 things that I want you to work on sort of like X's and O's wise. And I think like in maybe years past, like I definitely did those things like without a doubt. But I think what was maybe different is that I attacked those like there was no tomorrow, if that makes any sense. Like it was almost like I'm going to make this like, you know, I have this image of like Rocky in Rocky IV, like when he went to Siberia and like the rest of the NFL was training like Ivan Drago. Like it was like they had all the fancy stuff and whatever. And then you had like Sylvester Stallone here, just like, I don't care where I am, what's going on. I don't care if I got to do like overhead press with strollers. Like I am getting this freaking done. I don't care what it is. I'm hiring a chef. I'm going to Canada. I'm going to find the world's greatest like baseball pitching coach, like whatever it takes. And, you know, and I think like I think I took a lot more pride in the run game in the offseason from 04 to 05. Like Jim Zorn was basically like, one of his things was like, I need you quarterbacks to take pride in the run game the way you take pride in the passing game. And I think a message to Mike Holmgren is like, hey, you wide receivers, I need you to do the same thing. And then I think they asked the running backs to take more pride in the receiving game. Like it was all those kinds of things. And there was also a void in leadership. Like we lost Trent Dilfer going into that 05 season. He was a huge leader on our team. And so there was an opportunity for me to step up in ways that I previously didn't need to and really hadn't.
That could be an intimidating thing. Naturally, a quarterback is going to be the leader, but I'm also thinking about your offensive line. Those are some big personalities, talented guys.
Well, it's just really communication between those guys. Like that was one of the things, like Toback was such a leader on the O-line, like such a leader. But there's so much other things to do like during a game that like one of the things Trent Dilfer was so good at is like we'd come there, we'd look at the pictures, we'd like come up with a plan, we'd make adjustments, and I would just say, you know, or Trent would just say to me like, I'm going to go down to the O-line. And he would go down and have like a full on like, I don't know, he just took it. And so like then all of a sudden it was like my job. And those guys are actually really, really good to work with. But at the same time, like the Army needs to talk to the Navy. And like you think it happens naturally. It doesn't. Like it really doesn't. You need to, like on the headsets as an example, the O-line coaches and those people, they're on their own like channel as like the other people. And I think as players, it's similar as well.
When you start taking pride in the run game, it seems really obvious when you have Sean Alexander. But how did that change, right? Like,
yeah, well, I mean, no doubt, not to take anything away from Sean. He's amazing. And I tell people all the time, he is the best goal line back in the history of the NFL, like bar none. Like he is incredible inside the 5. He's like, there's no one better, nobody. But it is a team effort, you know, and Max Strong, I mean, that dude has never not had a successful tailback, never. Our offensive line, obviously, you know about the 2 Hall of Famers who are so good, but Robbie Toback, like making the calls, a lot of our calls at the line were adjustments that were not called in the huddle. Also, Toback was always pushing the tempo. Tempo meaning like when the play's over, how much time in between till we run the next play. And he could just get a sense of like who we were playing against. Are we playing against big ogres that like we had an advantage because of our athleticism? You know, he was great that way. On the right side, the guys that like get no credit. I mean, Chris Gray gets no credit, but he was amazing at that backside cutoff. One of the best things that he did. Locke, same thing. I would even say like one of our blocking tight ends, Ryan Hannum, undersized kind of guy, great at the backside cut block. So yes, we would run left a lot, but we were running left because that cutoff, that cutback was always there. And I also think we ran left a lot because, you know, Mike liked to be on the left hash for a right-handed quarterback for his plays. But I also think like even that year, you know, Darrell Jackson, our starting, you know, probably our most productive wide receiver, he was out and we were playing guys that that were like, we had 2 Penn State guys. They knew how to run block. Joe Jaravicius looked like a NBA power forward. Bobby Ingram was gritty, like DJ Hackett, Urban. Like there were all these guys that were great at blocking downfield, and that takes a 8-yard run into an 18-yard run. So it was, I don't know, it was pretty cool. We were in a groove. Cool. We were in the zone that way.
When things got intense, what could Robbie Tobeck do that always made you laugh?
Laugh?
Yes. Yes.
Shoot.
Those guys, he's a jokester.
You know what? He didn't talk like, so the how it goes in a football huddle, okay? Quarterback steps out to get the play from, in this case, Mike Holmgren, okay? So he's like, all right, he's out there, and Mike Holmgren's like, all right, let's go 2 jet X stagger, wash out across, fake 40. And while that's going on, Tobeck's in the huddle, and he's the leader of the huddle. He's talking. I'm not in there. So, like, truthfully, I don't really know. I don't know what they're saying. I hear later about conversations like he and Hutch have, or he and Chris Gray have, or whatever, but like, I'm not in there. Personnel is moving, 3 wides, 2 tights, like whatever. We're coming in the huddle, out of the huddle. So it's really their huddle. Now, when I step into the huddle, that's when all the talking stops, and then boom, I call the play. But no, it wasn't like, I don't know. I'm not in there. But what I can tell you is that when, times are tough and stuff hits the fan, like, who can you count on to step up and be the guy, to be the leader and just set us straight? And, Tobeck was just excellent at that. Really, really good. And especially getting in the mindset of the O-line. To me, the O-line is like the foundation of the house. Like, you're not going to like recognize them or drive by and say like, oh, what a great foundation. But without that foundation, like, you really got nothing.
Well, now I am going to start driving by houses and thinking that has a great foundation.
Well, what you do is actually you drive by, and I had a house on the street where we lived here in Seattle. Like, the foundation cracked, a couple doors down. And it was like a cool house, but it had a cracked foundation. Like, they couldn't sell it. It was a disaster. Eventually, they had to just like wipe it clean. But you notice when there's a bad foundation, you notice that.
Yes.
You don't always notice when there's a great foundation.
That year for you had a career high, and you led the NFL with a 98.2 passer rating. Here's another stat from that year. You probably know this, your completion percentage.
I have no idea. I know nothing about my stats.
65.5. Okay, so you were up there, right? Okay. You're up there.
Well, I do remember, like, back then, it's different. Back then, the goal, like the gold standard, the Joe Montana standard was if you could hit 65% completion, like, that's what we're shooting for. It's way different than that these days, But
what do you like about having that be the standard? Or maybe you didn't like that as the standard.
I never cared. I would I'd get a notebook at the beginning of the year, and I would write this down. I heard Mike Holmgren say it, and he probably heard Bill Walsh say it. I do this every year. I would write 2 things. I would write at the top, on the outside of my book, I would say, just do everything right, and the score will take care of itself. And it was really like a 1 play at a time mentality. I would just do like everything, everything right. And I can't affect like the scoreboard, really. I can't affect like if we stop the run, if the kicker makes the kick, like that's out of my control. But I can control a lot. And I used to even think like at the end of the season, it would be like, hey, if I just played 4% better, 10% better, like our whole season's different. So it was really like a look in the mirror type thing. And in case you ask, the other thing that I would write on the inside was SUAL, shut up and listen.
Okay. I should probably write that on my notes before I do any interview.
Which one?
Shut up and listen.
I needed it at the time.
Well, since you mentioned Mike Holmgren, look, he is infamously tough on quarterbacks. What phrase or sentence or like thing of Mike's voice still rings in your head?
A lot. I'm coaching high school football. I'm in year 3 right now. And the amount of things that I say that I first heard him say is unbelievable. I actually wish I remembered more to use them because I'm running out of like sayings.
You're running out of Mike.
No, he's incredible. And honestly, like when he would say things like kind of like early on, I don't think I even knew what he meant. And then it took me longer than it probably should have to understand what he meant. But like one thing would be, he would say to Brett Favre and he would say to me, and he would say, listen, you're an artist, not a blacksmith. You're an artist, not a mathematician. So if we're in an underfront and they bring a strong dog, 3 fire zone, and I have 22 ZN on, like you don't have to hit the hot to the H because like that's what the rule says. But I'm just like, I love math. I was trained like that. And I saw him say that, you're an artist, not a blacksmith. And I saw Brett Favre, sometimes he hits the hot. Sometimes he, hits his fifth and hits the Z on the 12-yard in and takes a shot in the chin. And it's like make yourself hard to guard by being an artist. You have a blank canvas. Your game is a canvas. Maybe it's check down, shot. Maybe it's shot, check down the rest of the day. Like maybe it's, who knows? You're an artist, paint your canvas. And I think that's one of the best things that he ever said to me. It took me a while to really, really understand, but that is one of the best things.
So when do you feel like you finally fit into Mike's system or understood that?
There was a lot of different moments. I remember, so I played, got hurt, didn't play well, got benched. Trent goes in and starts. And he went undefeated with the team. There was a lot of things that I learned from watching Trent. I'm sitting there and Mike would yell at Trent and Trent would be like, okay, I got it. And I was like, wait, what? But I mean, there's details and layers to it. I could write a book, but basically, if I had to point to one moment, we're down in Dallas. It's the game Emmitt Smith's going for some NFL record and Trent tears his Achilles and I'm the backup. And there's a whole backstory there. But I go in, get a bunch of completions. We go down. I think we kick a field goal to win the game. And I'm waiting to go into the offensive into the offensive team meeting the next, Monday, the next day. And all the assistant coaches are sitting out there, Nolan Cromwell and all these guys. And they say to me, they're like, that was your best game as a Seahawk. And I was like, what? That was not my best game as a Seahawk. I was like, I don't know. It just wasn't, I don't know. And they explained to me, they were like, no, this is what we really liked. And I remember just having this aha moment where I was like, oh, well, I can do that.
You've been making this too hard the entire time.
I think I was just trying to do it myself. I think I was trying to have SportsCenter top 10 type plays. And they were like, no. We believe in our system and our offense. And we have I was in the 101 version. We have a 201, 301, 401, 501. We have, this thing can expand if you just sort of graduate from first grade, second grade, third grade, become a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. If you can just graduate. And that mindset really, really helped me. And even I would say the last game I played in, I think it was that season, we played down in San Diego. Chargers needed to win to get into the playoffs. We were young and banged up. People did not know what Mike Holmgren's future was going to be. In fact, he had told a lot of the older players, hey, this is my last game coaching you guys. And I remember Trent was on the IR, so our backup quarterback was Jeff George. And Jeff George gets a really bad rap in league circles. He was incredible here in Seattle. He was incredible for me. He was incredible for Darryl Jackson, Corin Robinson, Bobby Ingram. He was great. He was great with our coaches. He coached me up going into that game in a way that was hey, Zorn's right, man. Gil Haskell's right, man. Here's what you need to do. And I forget exactly how he said it, but I'll never forget. He took a Sharpie to one of the game balls and he called himself the sheriff. And he autographed the sheriff. And I think we were playing against Marty Schottenheimer. And he was like, hey, why don't you go beat old Marty Schottenheimer this game for the sheriff? And I was like, I don't think you can do that, man. But it was great. I kind of took that into that game, this completions mindset, just a mindset, let's just win every play. Whatever the result of the play is, let's call it a win. And by the end of that game, with what I as a younger version of me would thought oh, that's too conservative of an approach. It was 400 and something yards passing and overtime winner. It was awesome. So I think if I had to pick an aha moment, it'd kind of be that Cowboys game.
This NFL season, feel every play, every hit, every moment with the Sony 1000 XM5 noise-canceling headphones, the official headphones of the Seattle Seahawks. With premium noise cancellation, you are in the zone. No distractions, just pure football. Whether you're in your living room or on the go, you'll never miss a beat with Sony headphones. We've been getting the backstory from Matt Hasselbeck on kind of all the things leading up to 2005. We have yet to talk about the actual results and how that year played out, or even what it felt like in training camp, because you talked about the difference in losing in 2004 and how that propelled in 2005. Was it evident across the board in training camp?
So I don't know if it was the year before. I think Peter King or somebody picked us to win it all. And like a lot of national media made it out to Cheney. And that wasn't something like we were kind of the witness protection program of the NFL. Like no one talked about us, thought about us, wrote about us. They wouldn't visit us.
Few people understand Cheney, Washington in July and August.
It was great. It was great for us. But you know what was hard about it? It's like a very dry heat. And so that year in 2005, our first game's down in Jacksonville, and we were struggling. The heat was a real thing. The humidity was a real thing. But no, I don't think we knew. It was just all about the football. And we had a laser focus that year that was just all about the football. And I mentioned, like we said goodbye to some really talented players with a lot of potential. And we went with, I think we had a bunch of drops the year before. We went with like guys that were slower and were sure-handed. We brought in a bunch of veteran receivers at training camp. Like I think it was like Jerome Pathon and Joe Jaravicius and like Peter Warwick. Like it was like a lot of different guys, and it was just like a sort of a different mindset. And it wasn't flashy, it wasn't sexy. It was kind of like, who can we count on? But it was no, we had no idea, to answer your question.
Well, and then you come out of the gates, you lose to Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. And if you look back at their year, they ended up finishing 12-4. So that was a good Jags team. But is that deflating?
We got spanked. And there was a lot of, we had 2 athletic trainers leave that year. I had mentioned Tim Ruskell had come in, and, there was a lot of turnover. And it's hard on a team. Like, we were a family, even though, there was room for improvement. Like, we got rid of Grant Wistrom, I think. Or maybe we didn't get rid of Grant Wistrom. He was there. We got rid of guys that were like blue collar guys. Yep. That were just like, and I would even say that weren't even players, so like that's what I was trying to say. Like the athletic trainers were even different. So like we go down there were guys, it wasn't necessarily in their job description, but like every single TV timeout, like make sure you are hustling and getting Gatorade and electrolytes and water to like these different guys. It was new. We were coming together. I mentioned Trent was gone. And instead of Trent, we had David Green, who was a rookie, awesome guy, awesome player in college. But like he was learning, like we were all kind of learning together. I was learning. And yeah, so like that was a really tough loss, but it wasn't necessarily a close game. I remember we were down a bunch, and I threw out, like Mike Holmgren calls it like a Hail Mary, like a frustration Hail Mary, like 80 yards away. I can't reach. I go ahead and try to throw it. I get blasted. Get injured, and now I'm injured for the next 4 weeks. It was just like it was a very, very bad start, but a good lesson in that, like, it doesn't matter how you start a season, you can finish well.
Well, and I don't know what you guys felt in the locker room, but it was after that Rams game, right? You were telling us earlier, Rams had been the nemesis, right? Mm-hmm. That's how you had lost the previous year. But I think it was the win against the Rams on the road. Like, as I was looking back, I don't like to play the game of we should win this game, we shouldn't win this game. But I specifically remember looking at that game and the rest of the schedule and where the bye fell. And I'm like, that's it. Like, you could legit run the table.
Interesting.
After that game.
We never thought that way. I mean, I for sure was one game at a time. A couple things we did, though. We had Grant Wistrom, and I believe we added their other defensive end, Bryce Fisher. Mm-hmm. And Grant had been with us and was super helpful, but like Bryce was next level. I think he maybe played at Air Force.
Yep.
He had all his notebooks.
Yep.
And he would come to me and we'd talk on the plane. We'd talk at lunch, whatever. He'd be like, I used to hate when you would do this. I was like, oh, okay. Now and this was our call for that. And this was our call. Like, so it was like, we got stronger from stealing from them a little bit. And he told me, he said, listen, if you do this and you do that, like, I'm just telling you, the responsibility for outside contain is the defensive ends. I was like, I don't know about that. He's like, I'm telling you, that's how they do it. It was like a flaw in the system. It was like Super Mario Brothers growing up. Like, you like know how to get into like a warp zone.
Cheat code on that one, yeah.
And it was huge. Like, stuff like that was huge. There were also things that just kind of happened to go our way. I don't know if it was that year, but I kind of think it was. I feel like the Cardinals had like this amazing baseball game the night before this game. You might have to fact check me on that. Sometimes the years run together. But like the crowd noise for the Rams that day wasn't quite what it normally was.
Well, in that dome, it was very hit or miss. If you did not fill it, it felt like you were in It was like gray. Remember that?
Eventually, they lost the home field advantage. I think it's when they went from AstroTurf to Field Turf. A lot of that, like the speed change. But that game, if I had to think about like one thing, there was a fumble recovery on a punt from J.P. Darsh, our Canadian long snapper, who's now the team doctor for the Chiefs, ironically. But I remember Mike Holmgren in the locker room after the game. And we're like, what's he going to say? Who's he going to, thank? None of our starting receivers were available for that game. All our backups played, and they played great. Our defense played well. And he said, I got one thing to say, or something like that. He's like, merci beaucoup, JP, and because he was French Canadian, and it was awesome. But I do remember going into that game angry. I was so mad at Jim Zorn. And I could never get mad at Jim Zorn. He's the nicest, most amazing person in the world. But I was mad at him the way that, like, Danielson was mad at, like, Mr. Miyagi and Karate Kid 1, okay? I'm like, wax on, wax off. What the heck, And he said to me, because I had years in this offense, he said, listen, you're going to have backup receivers playing in this game. Here's the one coaching point for you. I want you to throw it to where they are, not to where they should be. And I thought, like, what is, I'm like writing this down. I'm like, what? Like, that is the dumbest, stupidest, wax on, wax off. What is this good for? Nothing coaching point, right? And we call this one play. It's basically called like Fox 2 E deep cross. And I drop back, and Joe Jaravicius is supposed to be 22 yards on the numbers on the left side of the field all the way down. And I'm going to hit him on like kind of a deeper touchdown or big play. And I drop back and I look for him at 22 yards, and he's like, nowhere, can't find him. And I'm like, all right, I'm just going to, instead of going on to the next guy in my progression, I'm just going to like figure out where this dude is. And he's running basically like a shallow cross. And I'm like, instead of getting like, oh, you're in somebody else's territory, whatever, I hit it, it scores. And it was like, it happened. It was like my Danielson, like Miyagi moment with Jim. And, but that's what I remember offensively from that game. And you're right, it was a huge one for us.
Did Jim know that you were mad at him?
I think we would make fun of Jim like a lot with some of his coaching points. And then we'd be sitting there in like film review or whatever and be like, oh my gosh, this guy's a genius. You know what I mean? Like, we'd be like, what is this drill with? What is this drill for? Balls thrown at us, medicine balls, physio balls, slip and slide hoses, whatever. And then you watch the film and you're like, there's our drill. Wax on, wax off. Here we go.
I'm so glad you mentioned the slip and slide hoses. I was just telling the story in the Mariners clubhouse recently because there was a certain Mariners player that did not execute a slide very well. And I said, you know what maybe you would use is a slip and slide.
Yeah. Well, we were sort of like...
brought that out to training camp.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was an every year thing. But and I think people thought it was just like for fun or whatever. But I would argue with Jim, I think it's safer to slide head first. And I don't like sliding feet first. And so he was like, all right, I'm going to hear you. And we're going to put that in your game. But we're also going to, we're going to practice this. But what we made fun of him for, and, I to this day think I'm sort of right about this. If you're going to bring a Mariner over to teach us how to slide, like John Olerud, really? Like if I want life advice or how to hit, like John Olerud, okay? You're my guy. But like if I'm stealing second, I don't know, like Ichiro, somebody else maybe. I don't know. Just a thought.
That is true. That is true. Okay, so the Rams that year, they were coming off greatest show on turf. They start losing home field advantage. They finish, I think, second in the division. Okay. So I want you to think no home field advantage for the Rams. This is the year. I mean, it's huge home field advantage for the Seahawks. And I'm looking at 11 false starts for the Giants.
Yeah.
That was unbelievable.
And my brother was on the Giants that year. He was Eli Manning's backup. And, so I have a little intel now. And, Tom Coughlin was the head coach. He was my college coach, and I know him. And, there is that thing like, hey, we've played in the loud stadiums. Coughlin was with the Bill Parcells years, they went and played the 85 Bears and they played the Bill Walsh, Joe Montana Niners. And it's just like, hey, basically we just got to listen harder. Like, and that's kind of the coaching point. But no, and I mentioned this even the night I went in the Ring of Honor, like it's legitimate the impact that the 12s had on our team. for our defense, especially. I think we led the league that year in D-line sacks.
You did. It was an NFL best 50. Now, that was just across the board.
Okay.
50 sacks, but yes.
Which, so you go sacks, false starts, 11, and they missed some field goals, but they were like 50-something yard field goals. They weren't like, even on field goal block, like that's an issue. And you feel right. Like it all plays together. And, every quarterback that I would see in the offseason would say the same thing. Like, man, I hate playing in Seattle. You guys are so loud, blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't always easy for us as an offense either. Like we had a red phone. Jim Zorn was up in the booth, and I'd come over and I'd get on the red phone and talk to him. But if we were on if it was third down for our defense, we couldn't talk. So it'd be like, oh, hold on, third down. And I would literally just sit there, and he would just sit there, and we'd have to wait till the result. So we basically, if they held them to like a 3 and out, we only had first and second down to talk. And then after when it was punt, like I had to go. So this idea that we're making like sideline adjustments, not at home, like not with our team. And so that's why I think partly why the communication at the line of scrimmage with like Tobeck and myself, Mac Strong seeing it on the fly, and sort of like eye signals and hand signals to the receivers, it became a thing. We got good at it.
That defense was really good, though.
Mm-hmm.
And it showed up the following week. 42-0 in Philly. And I think they'd had some not great games leading up to that. I think, as I recall, and as I jogged my memory a little bit, I don't think Mike was pleased with the defensive effort in a couple of those games. And I believe that there was a challenge that was issued to the defense. And then you had all those guys. It was Bryce Fisher, Rocky Bernard, Grant Wistrom. Lofa was on that team. He was the rookie middle linebacker. Babs was on that team.
Lofa wasn't just on the team. Like, he was the guy.
And he solidified that spot.
He was the guy.
Yeah.
He was the guy. He was a rookie.
Yeah.
We brought him in. We had paid somebody else a ton of money. Yep. We had other good linebackers that were middle linebackers. We had 2 guys that were definitely starter caliber. Lofa came in day one and was like, whoa, this guy's legit. Pro Bowler. In that Philly game you're talking about, I think he had at least 1 pick six. He was great. I would say we were nervous going into that game, and no one really was giving us, like, we were a good team, but everyone's like, they're not really a good team. And we were going to Philly. Reggie White, who's an old teammate of mine, he was getting honored at halftime. It was Monday Night Football. The weather was bad. And we were like, it's Andy Reid and Mike Holmgren. They know our playbook. Like, there was a lot of stuff that was like, Jim Johnson, that was the defense. That was his style of defense that was still being played back then. Major headaches for our offense. We put in some first-time audibles. And to come out, like you said, it was 42-0. That might have been like the halftime score even.
The halftime score was 35-0.
So
Sean Alexander didn't play in the second half. He had 49 rushing yards. It was the first time in over a year he hadn't gotten to at least 60.
So what's funny about that is we come in at halftime, and Mike Holmgren's basically like, great job, all this stuff. Let's just hurry up and get out of here. And it was like, there's a whole half of football, and Mike never talked that way. So we literally didn't try to do anything offensively in the second half except for run the clock and get home, because we were coming like Monday night, Mike had already moved. Mike had already moved on to the next one.
Yeah, everything's in bounds. Run the clock. Here we go.
Pretty much. Yeah. But that was an epic night, and my favorite photos probably from my career here might be from that night. Great snow game. It was cool in Philly. Fun.
We've gone in detail with so many things. But big picture, to get not only home field advantage, to finish perfect at home, and to get that first playoff win in forever. That's quite a legacy.
Major
that you
stress.
guys have.
Major stress. I wasn't aware. They hadn't won a game since 84, Chuck Knox years. I remember we're playing Washington. I remember being on the sidelines and seeing all the kind of like the old Seahawks legends, the Steve Largents and that era of guys, emotional, teary-eyed. Like, this game meant, I think in a way, it almost meant more to them than it meant to us. And I remember getting goosebumps. I'm getting goosebumps right now, feeling like, oh, shoot, like, this is huge. Like, we have to get this win. We lose Sean Alexander in that game. Things didn't go our way early. Washington was a good team. They had a great Greg Williams team, Sean Taylor, Sean Springs. Like, they had they were good. And, getting that win is one of my favorite wins. That was a tough one, and it meant a lot.
Lastly, to cap off the conversation, because we have to come back to the Super Bowl, and we don't need to replay what happened in that Super Bowl, but you mentioned earlier that there were lessons taken from that. What are they?
I mean, where do I start? I mean, if I had to, the high of the championship game was as high as I can imagine. The low of the Super Bowl is as low as I can imagine. And, I remember the day before, team picture, Jim Zorn says to us, he's like, hey, God is good. And I was like, this is an incredible journey. I'm like, oh yeah. And he's like, listen, win or lose, we're going to thank him for the journey that was this year. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, of course, because we're going to win. Like, I've been watching the film. Like, we are the better team. We're going to win. And like I had a confidence in it. Now, we didn't play our best. And, they ran some trick plays and some things didn't go our way. And but before the game, he said, listen, win or lose, we're going to go to the 50-yard line like we have all season long with the opposing team. We're going to get on a knee and we're going to thank God for this game that we get to play in, for this journey that we've been on. And I remember being there with Seneca Wallace and David Green and being like, yeah, totally, I'm in. And I remember when the game was over and the black and yellow confetti is falling, and the absolute last thing I want to do, like I literally wanted to strangle somebody. The last thing I wanted to do was get on a knee, especially with a Steeler player, and sort of say a prayer of thanksgiving and being grateful. Because in the moment, everything in me felt opposite of that. But I think it was a great lesson for me in my life to, even when you don't feel like being sort of obedient in a grateful heart or thankfulness, it's the right thing to do. And I would just say that I now see there's a picture of like me, Sean Alexander, DJ Hackett, a few other guys sitting on a knee waiting for the Steelers. I felt like throwing up. But there's a picture and it brings me back to that moment. And there's a lot of times in my life, just buried my dad 2 days ago at his funeral. And there's moments in my life that I'm just like, you know what? As bad as this is and as much as this is brutal, being able to look at a positive spin and have a grateful heart. Like this guy, I'm so grateful that he was my dad. I'm grateful that he's the guy that raised me. I'm thankful for the memories that we have that other people don't get to have with their dad, all these types of things. So I think that's an example of a lesson that was learned the hard way, but I still think it was a good lesson to learn.
And I think that is a great note to end on as we wrap this episode of Seahawks Stories 50th season edition. Thank you to Matt Hasselbeck for all the insights and the stories.
Appreciate it.